Are you an adult now, but you were emotionally smothered by one of your parents? In today's video, I want to look at 8 red flags to be aware of if you want to have contact with that parent as an adult. So being emotionally smothered as a child by one of your parents can have a huge toll on the child as he or she's growing up. And in my private practice, I often get asked a lot, is it safe to have contact now? Should I have contact now? How does that look? What kind of boundaries should I have? Should I talk with them about this? So I want to explore 8 red flags that I came up with in terms of things to be on the lookout for if you are indeed having contact with those parents as you are now an adult. Before I go on with the 8 red flags, I want to say that absolutely, yes, you have permission. Give yourself permission to have firm boundaries, which can include no contact. If you feel you need to do that for your own good mental health, then you absolutely can have any kind of boundary you want with a parent who emotionally smothered you. Because that is abuse, and as I've mentioned in some other videos, just because it's covert, which means hidden and other people can't see it, doesn't mean it wasn't real, and doesn't mean it caused a lot of damage, and doesn't mean it can follow you through your life if your parent is still alive and you interact with them. So let's say you've kept your distance for a few months, maybe even a few years, but now you're thinking, let me go back, it's the holidays coming up, and you kind of have mixed feelings about it, but you're thinking, let me give it a try. Maybe by now my mother or my father has changed. Well, that's a fair thought. That's something for sure that you can think about, think over. But if you go and visit and you encounter any of these red flags, then you need to really rethink it, because clearly that toxicity is still going to be around and continue impacting your life if you let it. So it's not on them anymore. They'll probably do their thing the rest of their life. This is now about you taking control of your life, empowering yourself, knowing that you're sovereign, you get to make your own decisions, and you get to set up any kind of healthy boundary you want. So red flag number 1 is they don't really want to talk about your childhood too much, and if you try to go there, they try to deny it. They want to deny or minimize that anything bad happened to you, your childhood was fine. And even if they do say, well, yes, I can see on some levels maybe you had a tough childhood, they may think that they had no part of that, which of course is the opposite of what really happened, of course. They had everything to do with that. So if you're noticing that they can't have a conversation about this, it's a fair thing to bring up. This is about your childhood. This is how you were impacted on many levels. If you can't talk to them about this, and then when you do, they either get defensive or try to deny things, then that's a huge red flag. And following up on that, number 2 is that they're not denying perhaps, but now they're playing the victim or the martyr. So they're willing to agree with you. Yes, oh gosh, I know your childhood was tough. I know I wasn't the best mother, or I know I wasn't the best father. So then you're thinking there's an inroad there. They're starting to get it. But then they immediately go into the martyr role, the victim role. Well, that's because, I had to take care of your grandmother all those years. For God's sake, she was dying of cancer for about 9 or 10 years already. I had to really be over there, and that took all my energy, and I was consumed with that. Or I had to find new jobs every year. I kept getting laid off. I was consumed with working all the time. Or, I had to get my bachelor's degree during that period. I had to study. I had to go to school all the time. After all, I'm a RN now, and I made good money then to pay for you later on through being an RN. And so there again, they're maybe admitting what happened to you on some level, but now it's all somebody else's fault. They had very little, if anything, to do with it. And in fact, they're making themselves be the martyr. And if the parent has problems, they need to solve that and work on that with other adults in their life. They either need to get professional help or work that out with somebody who's their own age in terms of a significant other or a pastor or a close friend. That's for adults. That should not be unloaded on a child. The number 3 red flag is they continue to sort of make everything be about them. So no matter where you're going with the conversation, no matter what's coming up, maybe you just had this huge accomplishment in your life, but somehow it's tied into them, or they turn it around and they start talking about themselves. And also that includes overtalk, because quite often parents who smother their child think that that child has to be like their little mini therapist and just sit there and listen to them all the time. So if you notice over talking, maybe even talking over your head like you're not really even there, or maybe they know you're there, but they're making the talk be all about them, their life, and they're tying what you just brought up into them somehow, big red flag. And red flag number 4 sort of ties into 3, and that they just simply don't get you and they don't really hear you. And by getting you, that's that feeling you have where you've really connected with somebody, and that somebody may not fully understand you, they may not fully accept certain things about your life, but they get you. You can feel that they're present with you and they understand what's going on. And this is hopefully the connection that for any of you in therapy have with your therapist. You're absolutely hoping that the therapist gets you, right? It's very subjective. That's why it's kind of hard to name, because it's subjective. It's just a feeling you may have as to whether someone's getting you or not. And that can tie into really hearing you. Maybe you're thinking, well, they don't really get me, but they're really trying to hear me. And by hearing you, it means that maybe they're not even sure what you're talking about, but they're listening, they're present, they're trying to grasp it. They want to understand you better. They want to have a better connection with you. So if they're not doing that and they don't get you or they don't hear you, be aware of that. Red flag number 5 is they reframe your childhood in a way that's convenient to them. So maybe you're sitting around during the holidays bringing up childhood memories. Maybe your siblings are there too and you're all sharing stories. Or maybe you're just wanting to have a heart-to-heart talk and you're just simply bringing up past events and you want to talk to them about it. And maybe it involves some of that emotional smothering, but as you're talking, they're continually trying to, and or flat out doing it, reframing what you're saying. No, that isn't the way it was. Oh no, you have a mistaken memory of that. Oh no, that's not true. I can call your Aunt Marla right now if you want me to, and she'll confirm that the way I'm remembering it is more of the truth. You seem to have a skewed memory of your childhood. And then they'll reframe it into a way that everything appears pleasant. So remember, it's appearance versus reality, and how others see things, because that's usually big, the parents who do the emotional smothering. There's usually some narcissism there, so it's a big deal how they're perceived and how others see them. So they're wanting everything on the outside to look like a pretty picture, even though it wasn't. In fact, it could have been holy hell inside the household, but nobody wanted to talk about that or acknowledge it. But then now you know the truth because you've worked on yourself and you understand the trauma you've been through. And now as an adult, you're trying to have a conversation with them about it. And instead of them working with you on it and trying to meet you halfway, they're just reframing everything that's convenient for them, that continues to paint a rosy picture, even though it wasn't rosy at all. Red flag number 6, as an adult, if you're spending time with them and you notice they're either smothering some of your younger siblings, perhaps, if you have younger brothers or sisters, or if you don't have any younger siblings, that somehow they're smothering or involved in a very enmeshed relationship with a good friend, or maybe a family member. But you're noticing some enmeshment, such as they're on Facebook all the time, and then they're telling you that they met somebody online who's having a hard time in a state that's 2,000 miles away, and they've begun a relationship with them. And this person has told them that they're suicidal, so they're thinking they have to dive in there and try to solve their problems. And they're even mentioning that they may get a plane and go visit this complete stranger because they need me. I need to be there for them. They're clearly going through a hard time, and I got to fix this for them. If they're enmeshed in any way like that, with strangers, friends, other family members, your siblings, you may want to run for cover. Number 7 and 8 kind of go together. Number 7 is where you notice that now returning as an adult, and maybe you have a significant other in your life or a really good friend, and on some level they're realizing this or they know this, and then they're trying to sabotage that somehow. So they're either making inappropriate comments to them or somehow trying to connect with them or meet them behind their back. Now they say that's just because I wanted to reach out to them. I wanted to be close to them because I know that you're close to them. Or they're just wanting to know way too many details, or really giving you strong opinions about your choice, about who you should or should not date or marry or whatever, which is really none of their business for you as you're now an adult. Or telling you why they don't like your new girlfriend or like your new boyfriend. Or on the flip side, I really love your new girlfriend or your new boyfriend, and so I want to have you all over for dinner. Let's plan a trip next summer. I really want to meet their family. I'd love to know what they're all about. So anything that ties into your relationship, a primary relationship in your life, If you notice anything of what I just mentioned, and there's many more things that could pop up, then they may be trying to sabotage it in the sense that they're afraid of really losing you. So if you're often married or living with somebody, A, they may be jealous of that because that's not something they've had in their life, because the reason they did the emotional smothering in the first place is because they've been quite unhappy. And then aside from the jealousy, they simply may not want their son or daughter to be too far removed, really building a life with somebody, because it's going to take time away from them or energy away from them. So even though you haven't maybe spoken to them in a while, in their mind, well, you're still single, they're still waiting for this reunion, but all of a sudden this reunion now involves that you may be getting married, and they don't like that, and they're probably not going to be aware of why they don't like it, but then they may try to sabotage it in all those ways I just mentioned, because if somehow you're single again or you break up with somebody, then aha, they get their prize. They get their chosen child that they've always smothered for a reason, because when you're smothering a child, then you don't have to look inward at your own stuff, your own crap. So as a way to not deal with your own life, you decide you're gonna take over one of your children. And one of the reasons parents do that is because it's a way to run and hide from their own inner feelings, their own inner confusion, anything to do with self. So instead of going inward, they focus on something external. And this could be like drugs, alcohol, gambling. But in this case, we're talking about emotionally smothering a child. And lastly, red flag number 8 is similar to 7, but this is not so much about somebody significant in your life. This is about sabotaging your growth. And so you make contact or you go and visit and you just had some great accomplishment. Maybe you finished your PhD program. Maybe you got a great promotion at work. But on some level, they want to sabotage your personal growth, because again, the more you grow, that may mean you may fully leave the nest. They can't control you anymore the way they always had been able to when you were younger. When you were younger, you just kind of gave in. You're a little kid. You capitulated to them. And they knew that, and they sensed that, and they liked that. But now here you're an adult, and you're sort of listing all your accomplishments, and they want to keep you as close as they can. So then they may make negative comments about what you're doing with your life. They may keep pointing out what's wrong with things versus what's good with things, putting a guilt trip on you in terms of, oh, you know, if you move to France next year like the way you want to, you're not going to be here next summer for your cousin's wedding. And you know your Aunt Marla isn't doing real well. She's already in stage 3 cancer, so you really need to be around for in case she's at the end of her life. And so on many different levels, including guilting you, they are trying to sabotage your life, a huge red flag. So I hope these red flags have been helpful. I can come up with many more. I just jotted those down right before I did the video. And the reason I'm saying that is I jotted them so quickly because they're so commonly used. It's kind of a go-to mechanism for parents who emotionally smother one of their children. And there's more, so be aware. But please let me know your thoughts about this in the comment section. If there's anything you'd like to add or any questions, I'd like to hear it in the comment section as well. Please subscribe to this mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.